Hi, and welcome to our latest lesson. So, today we're going to be looking at an error type that is actually not especially hard to work with once you get used to it, but for many readers is quite obscure because it's not emphasized in conversation, namely misplaced modifier. And this is an error that if you learn to spot it very well, the SAT writing and language section will become some very effective and very reliable points because it depends on a set of context clues that is extremely straightforward, but again, requires some adaptation. So, first of all, to see if you can identify misplaced modifier right off the bat, take a look at this sentence. Because they lived for only a short time, the researchers selected these organisms for the experiment. Now, it may seem a little unusually or awkwardly constructed, but it also does seem to have many of its necessary components. You can look at this or skim this and see that this is a sentence telling us about an experiment involving short-lived organisms that were chosen for exactly that purpose. It seems pretty sensible. But the truth of many SAT grammar questions is that the basic sense of what is being said is not enough. You need to pay attention to construction. Now, if you don't see anything wrong here, then the truth is you might just not be familiar with misplaced modifier or dangling modifier, which is a concept that is actually quite easy to define. So, when you're dealing with misplaced modifier, what you're going to have is a description that does not align with the proper noun. Typically, you're going to see the right words in a sentence, but you're going to see the wrong order. And if you'll return to our example, you'll see that that is exactly what we have. So, take a look at this. That we have they live for only a short time, and then the researchers. Now, what this sentence would logically be saying, again, just using common sense, as you often have to do here, is that researchers would not be the ones living for a short period of time. It should be the organisms. And in fact, there are several types of experiments out in the real world that do rely on organisms that reproduce, that have multiple generations in a short period of time, so scientists can study how they develop. But one way or another, researchers living for a short period of time just does not make sense in any reasonable context. But remember from earlier, we have all of the nouns and all of the descriptions we actually need, so what do you do here? Well, take what you have. Look for nouns, pronouns, and descriptions, phrases or adjectives usually, and reorder them once they have been identified. So, first one that might stand out is they. Major topic, but whom does it refer to? Well, at first it seems to refer to the researchers, other central noun, but should be, based on a close reading of this, referring to organisms. And in order to make this misplaced modifier disappear and the sentence take on a proper logical construction, what we should do is correct it in the following manner. So now that the nouns have been identified for ordering, what you're going to see is this. That we have, because these organisms live for only a short period of time, again, identifying these organisms, well, they were what would be selected by researchers. So as you can see, there is now no confusion about what lived for a short period of time, to say nothing of the fact that we initially had the idea that researchers would only live for a short time. Keep in mind, as always, that people will, when speaking, move straight past errors of this type. The problem is, the SAT will not allow you to do so because it is a matter of grammar and construction. And now, to see how you are with this, some practice questions. So, what you should do now is test out your skills on the following 3 sentences. So for each one, try to identify the error. In each sentence, there will be exactly one thing wrong. And just so you know, as we saw with the example, misplaced modifier can take a little time to correct. It is sometimes a matter of rewriting somewhat more major portions of a sentence than you might be required to in an SAT question that is about verbs or about pronouns. Sometimes it's not enough to just switch a letter here and there. But here are the three that you should take a look at. Some are quite straightforward. Some you might find a little more tricky. And again, keep in mind the principle that you're looking for the order of ideas and the alignment of descriptions and nouns. Not simply, do we have approximately the right ones? So, give this a minute, and then we'll see the correct answers. Okay, just a little more time, maybe 30 or 45 more seconds, and then we'll see how these went. All right, let's take a look at the correct answers here. So, you have your work ready. We'll do these one by one. Now, the first one, an increasingly popular career choice, is the description that we had to deal with. And you may have noticed that that seemed to be referring to students at first, who could not logically be a career choice, or maybe numbers of students. But if you switch the wording around and have an increasingly popular career choice refer to software engineering, then you get phrasing that's much more effective. Second one. This one was tricky because in the original version we had one of the leading 20th century modernists, but the phrase that came after that was Marcel Duchamp's ideas. Now, you'll notice that when we were talking about misplaced modifier initially, we didn't say anything about possessives. It was all nouns, pronouns, and the descriptions that line up with those. And the thing is, you would not say Marcel Duchamp's ideas were modernist or one of the modernists. They can't be a person, they're ideas. You would have to use him, Marcel Duchamp the person, as your noun to describe a 20th century modernist. So this is where the SAT seems to go kind of crazy with things that, again, it seems like just one letter in everyday speech. People would not think twice about this. But to get those points, you're going to need to think about this. Now, the final one is perhaps the most tricky, because what we've seen already with misplaced modifier is that you can often fix up the beginning of a sentence, or maybe the main subject, in order to start getting rid of this error. But When you have something that is a modifier that's at the end of a sentence or at the middle of a sentence, working with that can be quite difficult, and with the third one, that's what we had. You'll see that this phrase, a possible means of improving, um, was originally positioned at the very end of the sentence. And there, the problem is, it seemed to refer to United States. Now, the United States would not be a means of improving anything. You can't really say that a country and a means or a method are the same. But what would be a means of doing something? Well, gentrification would be a means of doing something. And the idea is that there, you may have read somewhat quickly. It may seem a little awkward at first that we are moving a long portion to mid-sentence, but it turns out that this is what you need to do, because otherwise we're wrongly describing different areas as a means or method, the United States as a means or method. No, gentrification, which is an economic way of, say, bringing business and housing changes into different kinds of cities, that would be a means or a method. Now, the other thing is that you will need to deal with these in terms of entire passages. So chances are, if you don't know on your own what gentrification is, the passage would tell you enough about that you could figure out that, okay, yes, gentrification is a method. But the added challenge is you need to be able to spot misplaced modifier. You can't just kind of go with the flow of a passage and assume that because it's right words, ordering doesn't matter. Order always matters. And now that you know how to see this, you're in pretty good shape to start getting a lot of these questions right. But as always, effective work on the SAT is going to be a matter of practice. Easily more practice than this slideshow can give you. So, for that reason, you might want to check out our SAT books. We have an entire strategy guide that gets into immense depth on every single type of grammar strategy you need. This one and more. You'll have dozens and dozens of practice questions, and then, after working through those, try out entire fully formatted practice sessions on our SAT writing book. There are 8 sections in this, as many as the College Board itself has in its publications, and every single one has very detailed answer explanations. If you're interested in online lessons, you're welcome to visit us at PrepVantage Tutoring, or to just, check us out, learn more, and possibly learn what you need to succeed on the SAT. Until next time, we hope you found this useful, and keep checking back. There are more videos on the way. Take care. Have a great day.